Good morning, everybody. This is Daniel Dolphin with Dolphin Horsemanship, and we've got episode 3 of the Adult Onset Horsemanship podcast. Today, my guest is Mr. Jay Finn from Abita Springs, Louisiana. Jay, how are you this morning?
Good, buddy. How are you?
Oh, doing well. So, Jay, we start off the podcast with the lightning round questions for award points. So these are meant to be just short answer, quick little icebreaker kind of things to get us in the right mood.
All right, let's hit it.
What's your favorite way to relax?
Have a beer.
Okay. South Louisiana, not real surprising there. Morning or evening?
I'm gonna say morning. But I'm not sure for what though, so we'll say morning though.
Are you a morning person? You roll out of bed, you're wide awake, ready to go, or you got to have 3 cups?
Oh
of
no,
coffee?
absolutely not. I gotta have a coffee, cigarette, then I'm awake.
Okay. So maybe more of an evening, night owl kind of a person, or
I'll wake up. I'm usually up at 5 o'clock, and once I have my coffee, cigarette, I can go to about midnight. But I gotta have my coffee and cigarette first thing in the morning.
Okay. Bay or sorrel?
Probably sorrel.
Does pineapple belong on pizza?
No, absolutely not.
What's one of your biggest pet peeves?
Someone hanging my bridle reins up wrong.
So
my wife is the absolute worst at it.
We've so the first podcast was me. Then my first apprentice yesterday was Heather. We recorded her yesterday. That's 3 horse trainers in a row, and we all have the exact same pet peeve. Do not mess up my bridle reins.
I'll have a good day. Also, I'll say bridle rein. Like next couple hours, I'm just mad. I'm like, I've told everybody 1,000 times how to do it, showed them, demonstrated it, put it on video. Still can't get it done.
I hear you. Favorite beverage?
Water or Michelob Ultra?
Oh man, that's both water. What is something unexpected about you?
I only listen to on the road EDM and dubstep music.
Wow.
I do not like country music that much, so I love like EDM, dubstep type music.
Okay. What superpower would you choose?
That's a good one. I guess teleportation.
Okay.
Eliminate my travel time a whole lot more. Is kind of just like make money appear a superpower?
I'm not aware of any superheroes that have money as a superpower, but I keep waiting for someone to go Russia.
I like it.
Nobody's done that yet. Thoughts or feelings?
What do you mean by that?
That's however you want to interpret it, but I mean more, are you a cerebral thinking, non-emotional person, or are you intuitive, follow how you feel, gut feeling kind of person?
Probably feeling then.
Your favorite piece of tack or tool, horse related?
I have a homemade, or my buddy made a snaffle for me, a square straight stock snaffle that if I had to pick one, I guess, bit or tool in my tack room, it would be that snaffle.
Favorite book or movie?
Movie, because I don't read.
What is your favorite movie?
Oh, what is my favorite movie?
Dead Mouse documentary?
No, actually, I don't watch documentaries. I really don't watch that much TV. I guess if I had to pick, this is probably, I think it's an older movie now, probably the Avengers Endgame. It's probably the last movie I've watched. I can't tell you the last book I've read. It's been about 10 years ago.
Okay, what preventable question or problem do you get sick of answering or dealing with?
Probably the biggest thing or biggest question I get tired of answering is how can I get my horse to relax his head and drop his head during my clinics or lessons or just horses in general. I get that question asked a lot and simple, but I get real tired of answering that question.
Yep. Have you ever shaved with another man's razor?
No.
I heard that one yesterday, and I thought that could lead into some funny stuff right there.
That's a negative. I just won't shave if that's the case. Luckily, I don't grow a whole lot of facial hair. This is probably about, I don't know, 2 months now, and I just don't grow hair, so I'm in a good shape spot for that one.
All right, so I will award you 73 points, and that is enough for a compliment. What compliment would I give Jay Finn? One thing I would say is that in the last 5 years, your facial hair has actually thickened up quite a bit. You used to look like you were 12 years old, so now you look 23 at least, right? So
Hey, I just turned 30 now. I'm getting up there.
I understand, but
I still got the little baby facial hair, but actually I just shaved about 2 months ago, and I was actually about 4 inches long. And getting kind of, I mean, I look like a homeless person now. It wasn't a good, healthy looking beard, but I was like, all right, we went to that show in Florida. I was like, all right, this has got to go before I go to Florida.
Yeah.
They're gonna kick me out for just being a hobo.
Well, it works two ways. It's better to be baby faced. I've always looked older than I was, and the good thing about that was that when I was 15, I could buy beer, and they wouldn't card me. The bad thing about that is that when my dad and I walk around town, he's 25 years older than me. People think we're brothers. So he gets a hell of a kick out of that, let me tell you.
As much cigarettes and beer as I buy cigarettes every morning, I'm getting tired of getting ID'd every morning.
So Jay, give us the 30,000 foot view. Who is Jay Finn? What do you do? What's the basic past that kind of got you up to wherever you are right now?
Well, my name's Jay Finn. I own Finn Sport and Performance Horses over here in Abita Springs. Me and my fiance do. We run the operation. We strictly train, or I say strictly, I specialize in reiners and rein cow horses, and my wife does hunter jumpers and starting to get abroad into the cow horse a little bit. Grew up with a roping background. I think I got into horses when I was 12 and just riding horses. My uncle was a trail rider, kind of a coon hunter type guy. And so he kind of taught me how to ride, and which back there's no horsemanship, no kind of right, wrong. I didn't even know what a lead was for the first 2 years of my riding adventures. Then finally wanted to get into an event, and I'm a naturally competitive person. So I was like, figure out there's a way I could compete on the horses, and they had bear racing and roping in this area when I was a kid. So I went to team roping, did that for quite a long time. I guess I was probably 16, 17 when I was really heavy into it and doing a bunch of rodeos, and actually bringing home some good money. Probably bring home more money back than I do now. And started going to some AQHA ropings, and then that's kind of when I got my first step, or I didn't even know what reining was, what working cow horse was, nothing. I was at Dixie Nationals one year, and I saw reiners and the cow horses. I'm like, oh shoot, I want to go do that. That looks, again, my arrogant stuff back then, that looks easy and it looks fun. Well, of course, I go home with my $500 rope horse, and I go put draw reins on him or put martingales on him, trying to get his head down, make him slide. And well, I'm sure you can imagine how well that went. Wasn't pretty. From there, first guy, I guess I finally called after about screwing up 6 or 8 of my horses over a couple of month period, trying to get a reiner handle on them. Finally went row with Matt Howell over in Larange, Louisiana, and he was kind of my first step to actually getting how to train a reiner, how to correctly train a horse now at this point, because whatever I was doing was not the correct answer. And from there, and we just kind of kept on going to clinics. I rode with Matt for about a year, talking to people at these bigger shows and just really watching what people do. Look, I was able to ask a bunch of questions and not scared to really talk to people, and just kind of went from there. I moved to Texas when I think I was 19, 20 when I moved to Texas to go learn how to, or I guess better my career, and also go learn how to train colors with a buddy of mine, Danny Moore, in Spring Branch, Texas. And that's kind of when my career really took off, was when I moved over there. I mean, it was finally starting to get a basic concept of how to get a horse trained for these events, and just actually how to train a horse. And just luckily over there knowing people and being just, I've always been or I like to think I'm a really hard worker. And so I was able to get the horses in, finally got to go show, and just kind of snowball from there. And been very fortunate to have a pretty successful business since I kind of went out on my own or moved to Texas and all. And here we are today.
So today, what encompasses today? What's your day-to-day, your show? And you said you have more of a background in reiners. You're kind of moving more into the reined cow horse now. One thing you didn't mention that I wanted to talk a little bit about is that you're also a farrier.
Yep.
Where does your time get split? How does it all work out?
So I generally start my morning. I usually wake up around 5 o'clock. Said, have my coffee, have my morning cigarette, get horses fed, hayed, get everything kind of ready for the day. Right now, we got about 26 horses in training right now. And those are split between me, my wife, and we do have another guy that we just hired to kind of help us work horses and just kind of make the day go a little bit smoother. So we'll go through, and so right now we don't have a stall clearance, so we'll kind of clean stalls as we're taking horses out, getting them saddled, getting them bathed and all that kind of good stuff. And generally I'll usually get inside back of my house around, I'm gonna say anywhere from 9 to 11 o'clock. Just kind of depends on what goes on.
I guess, I mean, like how busy is your show schedule, and are you mostly doing young futurity kind of horses and derbies and that stuff, or more
Our show
UHA shows?
Right. Our show schedule's been a little screwed up since we moved here, just because so we moved here and this place wasn't set up for how busy we got so quickly. I mean, when I first moved back here, we didn't have the arena, no covered pen. We had like 6 or 7 stalls kind of somewhat set up. So we've showed probably 7 or 8 times this year. Just like just local events. I got a bunch of amateurs and non-pros starting to get into it, and kind of just doing some smaller shows. Hopefully next year we'll be back on a normal schedule where I'll be on the road. I try to show at least once a month, everything permitting, and really aiming for the aged events. And so I think this year I'll have 2 reining futurity prospects for the reiners, and I think 3 for the cow horse in the Fort Worth. So I'm really trying to direct my attention to my aged event horses, and both the cow horses and the reiners. Just really, I guess, up my game toward that venue. And that's really what I want to stick to. Just so everything going on this year between the hurricanes, getting this place built, money, because unfortunately it costs money to build this stuff.
Yeah.
And just trying to constantly upgrade the facility, make it nice, make it safe, of course, and just kind of keep everything progressing forward, and also still keep the horses rode, get them trained. So we moved here and got more stalls built, and we had the 17 stalls filled in that first month, which was a lot more than I was hoping for, but I was expecting compared to what I was when I lived here as a kid. I mean, I would say this was big horse country when I was a kid, where now I feel like, we're constantly getting phone calls, constantly getting more horses on a waiting list. And so it just kind of put myself in a bad spot. Just again, having to make the money, still keep everything getting built, and just constantly kind of upgrade. And so the show said this show season's been a hassle.
Yeah.
To say the least.
And then we had Hurricane Ida here about a month and a half ago that went right up through y'all's area. So did y'all have very much damage from that, or?
Nothing, not as bad as a lot of people. We got very fortunate. I mean, we had a bunch of roof damage, especially on the covered pen in the house, a bunch of down fences, but luckily nothing super major. Just basically a lot of patchwork, and we had to redo our cow pen, but luckily just a lot of cleanup, a big headache, and we was trying to help a lot of other people out around here that lost a lot more than we did. So, but we were very fortunate in that storm.
Yeah, it was still a Cat 3, 115 mile an hour winds or so when it got to your area. So that's plenty enough to do some damage.
That's the first storm because I stayed in the barn that night. That's the first storm I've ever felt really scared on. I won't be here for another one. I can tell you that now.
Yeah, that's usually how that goes. Everybody's the ones we've had the last few years, the Katrina and Rita, and then Laura last year. When I was a kid, I don't ever remember people evacuating for a hurricane, but there's a lot of people that have been through those bad ones now that are that way. They're like, yeah, if it says a Cat 3's coming again, I'm gonna be somewhere else when it happens.
We thought about this one is because we got I'm gonna say 26, 28 horse in training, plus we have a free brood mares. We have 20 head of cattle. I was like, how am I going to move these? By the time I decided this is starting to worry me a little bit, I'm like, how am I going to move this amount of horses and actually get on the road, get back? Because I could probably move, I'm going to say 9 horses. We have a 6 horse and a 4 horse trailer. So I don't know how I'm going to move this amount and be able to get back and forth enough to get everybody moved. Because I wasn't going to separate half the herd and leave half the herd here. Because if I can't take care of them, I'm not going to just bail on them.
Yep, I understand. You want them under your control and under your sight. You don't want half of them somewhere else. I get it.
Most of our clientele's from out of state, so this is my livelihood, and these horses pay my bills. As I know a bunch of people that kind of left and just left stuff behind. I'm like, I can't do it.
Yep.
Not morally, and just if they go down, I'm going down with them.
Yeah. What would you say is I'm going to use the word romance. That's maybe not the best word, but what's the connection, the thing that draws you to reining horses in particular? I mean, you started in roping, you could have stayed a roping trainer. What made you go that direction?
I guess on that first glance, I didn't know what a reiner was, didn't know such a thing. I knew pleasure horses, rope horses, barrel horses. Was how willing they were to do those type of maneuvers. I mean, again, looking from the outside looking in, I mean, yes, I know now there's a lot that goes involved into a reining horse, but just how, I mean, you watching those horses show and just how willing that they'll go circle to do the change, do the stop. I mean, you've been around me long enough to see what horses, I mean, my horse would stop, but when I say stop, I mean, all four legs and the head was in the air and just a lot of resistance. I mean, it wasn't training. It was just, I guess, just making them do what I wanted to do at that point in my life. And just that willingness to go to work. And once I figured out the amount of details you got to pay attention to, really, that's what first got me to the reining. Because all my horses back then when I was a roper, I mean, if I wanted to turn left, I mean, I had to pull left. And when I say pull, I mean, I was a bigger guy back then too. If I wanted to stop, I mean, I'm going to throw myself back in the saddle and both hand them and just draw them in the dirt. I knew I had to be a better way to train horses. I just didn't have the answer, nor did I know there was a really much at that point in my life out there to better myself until I actually found it.
So what about the farrier side of things? How long have you been doing that? And how, I would assume that many horses in training, you're also not a full-time farrier. So how does that work for you now?
I apprenticed under the guy that taught me. He was our first horseshoer, and at a certain point in time, I didn't know if I was going to be a horse trainer, horseshoer. I was kind of a confused kid, and still am to some point today. I was talking to him about going to school and just at least learn the basics so I can do my own horses, and if I need a little kind of side hustle gig, I could do it. So he told me not to go to school, so just ride with me. So I started riding with him at $40 a day, I think 3 to 4 days a week. So I rode with him about 4 years. Got, efficient and knew how to shoe a horse. Then when I moved to Texas, I got real fortunate to get hooked up with a guy that worked for A&M and Brazos, which are two big vet clinics, and to learn the corrective side of things and the reiners, the cow horses, the cutters, and just really how to, I hate to say discipline specific shoeing, because at the end of the day, it's all the same, but just little tips and tricks to, can I get a horse to stand up a little more in their stops, or get a horse to get a little more traction if they're a rope horse, and just kind of the same thing I did in my horse training. Just I always want to get better. I don't like shoeing. If I could, I would quit, but I'm not gonna let anyone do my horses. Just always trying to better myself so I can better my horses, my programs, and I'm never satisfied with where I'm at, and sometimes to a fault. But I just kept on shoeing, kept on trying to get better, and once I moved to Josh Lyons in Tennessee, it's kind of when I slowed down and never really went back to the public and just stayed to my horses and my select few outside clients' horses.
You brought up going to Josh Lyons' place. You want to tell us a little bit about that? How long you were there, and what prompted you to do that, and what did you get out of it?
So a good client of mine in San Antonio, friend client, I rode a few horses for. She was real good friends with Josh Lyons. He was coming to San Antonio when I lived down there to do a clinic, and of course she invited me, and I didn't know Josh at the time. I knew his dad, John Lyons, and John Lyons, great horseman, really great guy, but that really wasn't what I wanted to do. I didn't really like that kind of horsemanship, and it wasn't really what I was going to aim for. And then I didn't know who Josh Lyons was. It's like, no, he's a reiner. He still does the clinic side of it, but I really want you to come meet him. I was like, all right, I'll come ride with him for a day. So I went that weekend, rode with him, and really knowledgeable, really good guy. Really enjoyed riding with him that day, and still today, just really still enjoy talking to him. So he invited me to come out there for about 10 days. I still had my business, and just come ride with him and get to know him, see the place. And he hadn't offered any kind of job yet, so I went and rode with him for 10 days in Tennessee. Came back home, and he called me that next day. I got home and offered me a job, and at first I was still like, I'm making pretty good money where I'm at now, and got my own program, got my own, I'm showing horses a lot. I mean, we had cutters, we had ropers, reiners, a few cow horses. I mean, we're just really busy, and I really enjoyed a lifestyle like that. But after thinking about it for about a couple of weeks, I was kind of in a slump on how to get my horses to progress. I mean, I was going to ride with people like Chris Dawson and other people just to really try to better my horseship, showmanship, and just be a better horse trainer. So I finally took the job because I was trying to take that next step forward. So made a big move to Tennessee, sent all the horses home, I think I brought 4 or 5 head with me over there to still ride, show, or hopefully show. They're all 2-year-olds at that point. Started with Josh, and
that's a bunch. I never, I apprenticed for 6 years under different people. I was only ever allowed 1 or 2 horses when I did that. 4 or 5 that's a bunch for him to allow. That really is.
It was kind of, again, I went from, I'm not gonna say, you've been a horse trainer your whole life, man. We don't get rich doing this, man. You can make a good living doing it, but you don't get rich. But I started out making what I was making in Texas to $1,250 a month at Josh's, so there's no way. I mean, I got truck notes. At that point, I'm only supposed to be there for a year, so I'm gonna still pay for my ranch, my truck notes, my insurance. I was paying my help for the first 6 months to stay over there because I didn't want to lose him, and he kept a bunch of yearlings and everything off over there for me. So I'm still got quite a bit of overhead when I first moved to Josh's. And luckily from selling horses and show, when I had a really good nest egg, I guess you want to call it. So I was able to do it that way. So I went out that way and so started doing the horse training. So he was a kind of a step up my rein program. He's real good about getting, not necessarily how to train a horse necessarily, but how to teach a horse and really get in their head and make it their idea on how to get one trained at a really high level, and to make it easier for me, make it easier for them, and still keep the horses happy, keep them sound, and keep it progress. And also, I mean, the clinic side of it really helped me because, I mean, we'll be on the road for months and months at a time doing the clinics. It really helped my teach them how to break it down to a bunch of different people at different levels at the same time without kind of getting across and people getting confused. Because, I mean, there's be some clinics we'll have 15 to 25 people in an arena. And of course, myself at first, I'm like, I have no idea how to teach this many people. I'm used to my one-on-ones, and but that really helped my teach on how to just teach I won't say a large number because I will never do that kind of number group of people, but really how to break things down, and that way, no matter what level you're at, you'll be able to attain it and also bring it home with you. But so I was with him for about 1.5 years. I did get a little burnt out at that because at that point I was riding nothing but reiners and clinics, and I did kind of burn myself out on that part. We ended on pretty good terms, went on my own, and so still talk to him if I see him, and glad I went. It was great. Learned a bunch, and it really stepped up my program. Didn't quite go the way we wanted to, but that's okay. No big deal. Going there, I really wanted to learn how to still show horses, step up my showmanship. And we did get to go show quite a little bit, but not to the degree I wanted to. And I didn't want to be a full-time clinician, and I do very few clinics a year. Enjoy them. As I said, be on the road for months and months at a time and teaching that many people one weekend after the next really burnt me out on the clinic side of things. Mm-hmm. And I love talk.
Was that? Clinics are taxing. I mean, I do a 3 or 4 day clinic, and I look forward to that drive back home, a day in the truck with nobody talking to me. I'll call my wife or something, but I don't like, I've had all the people I can have for a little while, and don't ask me any questions or just, I don't want to hear a human voice, including my own, for about 24 to 48 hours,
Know the feeling. So I really enjoyed it. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to sound like I'm trying to bash on it by no means. It just for what my goals are, and I guess my career, my lifetime, that wasn't the route I wanted to go. And I'm super glad I went. I would do it all over again. I mean, I met my wife over there in Kentucky. So, of course, I made out more ways than just one where I was wanting to go in my life. And I didn't want to put myself in that spot where I got known as a clinician and then had to kind of, which I still had to, but restart my career as a horse trainer. Because, I mean, for like all my people I showed for in Texas. I mean, when I called them and say, "Hey, I'm back horsing," oh, we thought you died. We haven't heard anything from you, haven't seen anything from you, so we thought you just went to the clinic side of things. So I've kind of had to restart again and kind of
Sure. Yep.
get back on the map, and I'm still not there as much as I want to yet. Everything moving because we've moved a couple of different times before we moved back to Louisiana. So it's been a bad for my career, but really good for my knowledge and also understanding on how to really get in a horse's head, whether it's the reiners or the cow horses or just a horse in general.
Yeah. Don't think of it as bad for your career. I mean, anytime you get an education, it costs you something. And
absolutely.
You could go to school. I mean, like you said, you were plateaued and you shook things up right there, and it did cost you some money and some time building things back up. But I mean, that's just.
Oh yeah. I would do it all over. Say if I went back, I would change it up a little bit, but I would still go out there, and because he's got a very different mindset on. I guess it's from being John's son. A very different mindset, whether it's a performance horse or just your backyard type horses, and how to get in these horses' head and make my job easier, and also the owner's jobs easier on to get them trained, getting them broke, always kind of continuous in that horse's progress, and just keep them moving forward.
Let's shift gears a little bit back into the farrier side. Let's talk about sliders for a minute, because that really is one of those things that kind of is a reigning deal, and it's a bigger change than I think most people realize. I mean, you'll have some roping horses and stuff that you might put little sliders on, but why don't you kind of explain to us from a farrier and a reining trainer's point of view what the deal is with sliders?
So I'm gonna take it from. I'm gonna say we'll get one of my 30 prospects in that's not broke, barefoot, yada yada yada. But so I don't put sliders on until they really want to go into the ground and commit. Most colts I probably take 30, 45 days, give or take. As soon as they
from starting them to putting sliders on them, you'll have that done in 30 to 45 days.
On my good rein and bred horses, yes. Okay. But as long as they learn to go to commit into the ground and they're trying to go into the ground, I don't put sliders on them because again it makes their job easier, but it also protects them a good bit because when they go in the ground and are trying to slide barefoot, I mean that's a lot of shock going on just that hoof capsule, and of course it travels up the leg. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like you going ice skating with tracks or going rollerblading on gravel. I mean, it's not going to be. You can do it. It's just not easy.
Yeah.
That first set is a very, very, very basic. Just like you're going to throw on any other kind of shoe, it's going to be a completely flat 3/4 inch baby plate or 3/4 inch plate, whatever you want to call it. Because I don't want to make it where they ski out from underneath themselves, need to scare them, or just make them where they just want to lock their hocks and stifles up and just ski like an old time reiner. I want those horses to go down there and spread those back legs and really push and break in half and learn to push and push consistently, not just just lock your legs up and go slide 35 foot. I mean, I don't like that look, and I don't like the feeling on the horses either. Then from there, I'll go up to 7/8. I might start rolling the toe a little bit because one of the biggest injuries, or I don't know if I call it injuries, but it's the start of injuries when you start getting these horses slide past that 10, 12 foot mark. If that toe is just flat and if you got a unperfect base, that toe catches and they roll that foot. And when they're running down there, you're going to start causing some serious injuries, not only to all those tendons right there, but also the stifle, because now that's going to get pulled down. And plus it's going to start, on a younger horse, it's going to break their confidence because now they can't hold the ground. So we'll start rolling the toe and maybe start adjusting the plate, because we do, especially your really big stoppers, really kind of want to split when they go down there and start running and really getting to the ground. Their legs really want to kind of split, and sometimes too much, where they got to kind of come out and then replace their feet, which is not the end of the world. So we might start taking, this is your foot, that's pretty straight. If they're going out, I might just kick that toe to the inside a little bit. That way, instead of the foot traveling that direction, at least the leg travels the direction I want it to slide.
Yeah. So my breakover in the direction of travel, even though the hoof capsule does not.
Exactly. I'm real big on keeping it as natural as possible. No matter what, they're going to be balanced. The angles are going to be correct. It's because some people will offset them as far as lateral and bilateral, where they said they're just unbalanced. My theory on that is, whether it's a 3-year-old or 4-year-old, whatever the horse is, I'm only sliding maybe twice a week. But if I got them unbalanced like that, every step they take, they're tearing apart their joints, their ankles. I mean, nothing lines up. Now you're going to start getting soundness issues down the road. And one thing I take a lot of pride in on both my shoe and my trainings, we're real good on keeping horses sound. My old Blue Eye stud, I know you remember him. He's still showing. He's 17, 18 years old now and still marking 72s in the reining up in New York. So I take a lot of pride in that, but I'm a big believer. So if you don't have them balanced, I mean, it's just natural wear and tear. Anyway, so once we get past that 7/8 mark on a reiner, most times I'll stick to an inch, and then I might drag a heel out a little bit longer if they're getting still too spread out or getting a little too weak. And also depends on the footing of where I'm showing at. I might say drag a heel out just to give them a little bit more traction or put a little bit of a groove on one side just to help them stay standing up and just keep their legs balanced underneath them, because it is about when you start getting to those 20, 30-foot slide marks, I mean, it's a balancing act for these horses. So the biggest part when you're shooting these reiners is, one, don't make it too easy where they can just go ski and just lock it up, but also keep them straight where they don't just say either spread, or even horse that stop base narrow, I'll make them spread. That way it takes the shock off just the hocks and the stifles, where you watch a good reiner slide, that shock's going all through the leg, but also through the hip, up and through the half of the back. So now just a leg taking the shock of it. I want that whole hind end to just disperse that shock, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I think it'd be a good time for us to take the little commercial break and bring in our sponsor for this episode. So this episode is being brought to you by Dogma Pack, and Dogma Pack would like to remind everyone that no matter what the overwhelming amounts of scientific studies show, a foamy mouth is a wet mouth, and a wet mouth is a good mouth. That's our sponsor for this episode right there. Speaking of my pet peeves. So we talked about sliders there. In the stop, what percentage of a good slide would you say isn't in the rear end? So like a horse has to move their front end. If they mess that part up, the slide is not going to be good. They're going to just job and bounce. So what are your thoughts on that?
Biggest thing on that, I mean, of course, depending on the horse, you might have to kind of pick their front end up a little bit, whether it's with a aluminum shoe or maybe even a little bit of a wedge. But a lot of that comes from the training and also how the horse is just conformationally put together. But you can always make it better just with the right training. But also you can help with a little bit of the shoe and whether I need to make the breakover come back a little bit quicker.
Make it harder for them to lock up, basically, where they kind of have to break over.
Exactly. And so a lot of times on a really low-headed horse, as a younger horse, they're, of course, when they got low, they're just going to drop their shoulder down there with their neck as well. So I might work a lot more on just to getting those horses picked up in their shoulders, where that shoulders wants to elevate more throughout that stop. And that's usually your 3 biggest fixes for a horse that really wants to lock up on their stops. Once they get the feel of it, they'll hunt for that, of course, easiest way out.
So that brings up 2 other things. One, you mentioned conformation. Would there be any aspect of conformation that isn't classically correct that you actually prefer to see in a horse? Like, now I know cutters and reiners people don't realize how different a stop and a slide are. But I actually like to see a horse that's a little cowhocked. I've always gotten along with them way better. One that's real straight. I've never been happy with the stops and turns I get out of a classically built straight inline horse. Isn't as athletic, in my opinion.
I can agree with that. And most of my biggest stoppers, and I have quite a few in my barn right now that are I call them sickle hocked, where they're naturally just, again, it's not correct, but I find those horses naturally want to stop a whole lot deeper, and thus easier for them to get in the ground and hold that ground. And so same thing with the cow hock, where I said I want those horses to spread. And if those legs are already a little bit, now there's pros and cons to both of them. But if those legs are already there, of course, it's going to make it a lot easier for them to not only said whether it's a cutter, the cow horse, the reiners, to get into the ground and either hold the ground or balance themselves as they're sliding. So, but sickle hock and cow hock probably my 2 biggest. Like if I see them, that's not going to deter me from a a prospect to go show. Or I mean, one of my best mares that I have right now, I just finally bred her last year. She's pretty cowhocked. I don't say pretty cow. I mean, I would call her like a 4 out of 10. Is it correct? No, but she was such a good mare, and overall, just a well-built mare, got plenty of bone, plenty of mass. So I'm not going to let that deter me just because it's not a 10 out of 10 perfection. I mean, you've seen more horses than I have. I haven't seen a perfect horse yet.
One thing, I guess, while we're on confirmation, I seem to be noticing more and more, and we are a little different. I deal with a lot of different breeds of horses, not just quarter horses or even certain bloodlines of quarter horses, but it really seems to me like in my lifetime of dealing with horses, we have a lot more cases of shoulders that are straight up and down versus shoulders that are kind of running out there and give the horse some reach and some stride. Do you notice any other trends like that, or do you notice that one? Do you see that in reining bloodlines? Or
Yeah, you do see a lot in reiner and cow horses both, where so the shoulders are not. If I was going to put together a horse not where I would want it, but also the way we're breeding these horses today, we're almost getting away from conformational, I guess, purposes. Where I mean, some of these horses just naturally freaks. I mean, I got a little 3-year-old in the barn now. Conformational, he's a wreck. I mean, an absolute wreck. Probably one of the most talented horses I've ever been able to ride. I mean, what he does, he shouldn't be able to do the way he's built, but he can do it. I think we're just like anything else, it's constantly evolving. I mean, we're breeding these horses more for athletes, which we need athletic, but I really still like that kind of that correct bone, as correct as possible conformation. That way, because I like my horse to be able to show for a long time and just keep it all sound. But yeah, there's definitely the shoulders. So I like to let kind of where it's a little longer, where they can get some stride out there, not just straight up and down as much in a ways.
So on another aspect of that, I'm gonna ask this as an honest question, but this might be a little offensive too. So I'm just,
you ain't gonna offend me.
Yeah, we know each other well, but like some of the audience out there, if they're reining people following you, that they might be about to tar and feather me after I say this. But I have always found the reining rollback to be the weak link in the chain. And what I mean by that, I come from a cutting horse background. For what I see open level competition horses do, and I wouldn't be pleased with in my 2-year-olds. I feel like the slider is probably what makes that difference, and that it kind of keeps the horses from being able to hold the ground as well with the hind end. And so some sacrifices are kind of made and they get around there the best they can, but the best they can is not as good as I know an athletic horse is capable of doing. And I'm not saying reining guys aren't good hands. I mean, that's kind of why I've always like, I know these guys can ride a horse. So why does that come out to be meh instead of good? So do you feel like the slider, first of all, do you agree with that? Or do you think I'm a moron? And second of all, do you think the slider plays a part in that, or what?
100%. Again, like I said, the slide is a big thing, because especially you watch this horse slide, and sometimes they're not even really stood up in the back before they get rolled around. So of course it's going to be a lot harder for them to hold the ground, and sometimes they might just completely lose the ground where they got to kind of jump out and make kind of a U-turn. And I completely agree with you. And being a cow horse guy and train cutters too, it drives me nuts. And we'll say when I go show, when I do stop and roll back, I make sure my horse just stood up. That way, when I kind of sit them that way, I fall right back into my tracks as I came in. But the plates and also the ground has a lot to do with that. Especially, I mean, you're sliding 30 foot and you watch this horse sliding. I mean, they're kind of scrambling when they actually get that forward motion stopped. So if you ask them to roll back before they're actually stood up, well, now they're not holding the ground already. They're still trying to get their back legs up underneath them and actually stood up. They're going to do it because they're broken. They're trained that way. But just like anything, if they're not in position, something's going to have to give up to get back around and get pushed over there. Completely agree with you on that motion.
One of the main things I try to teach a cutting horse colt, they don't ever stop square in the hind end. They're always going to have their off herd side leg is going to lead. So let's say my cow is to my left. When they go and stop, their right hind is going to be ahead of their left hind. And that sets up the mechanics for the turn, because that right hind now is the outside hind. which is the dominant leg in that kind of a turn,
Right.
which is technical. Maybe I'm losing the audience here. I don't know. But
No,
again, just from the reining perspective, I also believe that y'all spend so much time teaching the spin. And while a spin and a rollback may look similar, technically speaking, they're total opposites. You know, a spin is a forward inside leg pivot turn, and a rollback is a rearward outside hind leg turn correctly done. And thus, I've always found if I take a horse that knows how to spin, it's easier to teach them to do a rollback than if I take a cutter that's used to doing a rollback and I try to teach him how to spin. That there just seems to be you never have a horse that does both equally well. They're always dominant, you know,
right.
one way or the other. So that's another. I've kind of always figured you had the sliders, and so that affects things. And then quite frankly, you just would rather have a good spin than a good rollback. And so you choose to dominate on that side rather than the other side.
Right.
So does that all?
I agree with you, but also disagree with you. So I mean by that, I can say this because I got more cow horses than reiners in the barn right now. And of course, just like you said, they're two totally different mechanics, whether you're on a cow or just doing your dry work. One thing that really helped me out a lot was like during my spin, when I'm working on my spins. For my program, my spin comes off my steering or my guiding. I don't actually work on spins that much. It's a byproduct on how well I can get the horse to want to stay between my reins and control their feet. So when I'm going to work on a spin, say today, I'll keep them pretty straight, just make them get off my outside rein and maybe pull a nose a little bit just to make sure that leg kind of comes back underneath me. When I work on like the herd work on a cow, I put a lot more bend into it and a little bit more draw. That way that leg comes around and that rib gets out the way to not only get a good rollback, but also not kind of screw up my spin or my spin program, because I have struggled with that in the past on how to get the best out of both worlds. And that's, as of right now, been my answer to that kind of question, because it is a struggle and it can become an issue.
So I glossed over a question earlier. I didn't let you complete it, but are there any other, you mentioned Matt Howell and Josh Lyons. Are there any other major influences on you that you'd like to bring up?
Yeah. So right when I left Josh's, I went to Kentucky, which was about an hour down the road. A guy named Joe Harper in Bowling Green, Kentucky, had a barn for me to rent. I had a few horses with me, and I was able to go rent for him. Didn't work for me nothing. But the amount I learned from him in those 2 months was almost unreal. Because he was such a, I want to say a trainer, because he does train, he does show, but such a horseman that he would get these horses so broken. That was his priority. That way the maneuvers, the cow work, everything just kind of flew together without, I guess, getting a specialized deal in where he shows a lot of cow horses. That's about all he does now. But just the way his horses went around and got so broke and so confident changed my whole aspect on what I should be doing on these horses.
Mm-hmm.
If I was going to pick one guy to go ride with that I've known in my lifetime, it would be Joe Harper over there, Kentucky's, because just from his 2-year-olds to his age horses, they're just so broke, so quiet. He can do anything, anywhere, and never got a fuss, never got a fight, and just went along with the flow and just broke.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. That would be one of my industry pet peeves. And I'll pick on cutters as well here. Like I had a cutting horse customer that had bought a brand new horse. He was a horse that had won like $9,900, you know, and they quit showing him. And he bought him just to run him in the 10,000 novice. The horse was still eligible. You know, this was a whole setup, ready to go deal. And he comes over, he got there early, and I hadn't got cattle up yet. So I'm like, well, you know, just hop on him. And this horse is like a 9-year-old or something. I mean, you know, he's not a green colt, won a bunch of money. We get out there in the pasture to start gathering cattle, and the horse lost his mind. I mean, the guy had to get off of him, and I gathered the cattle, and then he led him into the barn afterwards. And I don't know that horse had ever been out of an arena. You know, I mean, it was really, and I don't understand how somebody can do that at all. Like our 2-year-olds, they're on a cycle, so they're all gathering cattle throughout when we're having to doctor the yearlings. For those that don't know, every cutting horse operation is also a cattle backgrounding operation. So you're going to have a potload or two of calves coming in every month, and you can't let them die. You have to be doctoring them. So all the 2-year-olds get roped off of there. I mean, they are dadgum broke by the time they're 3. And how in the world you train a horse for 2 years and show him and have never taken him out into the world just blows my mind.
Oh, absolutely.
So I appreciate that about that guy. That they should be a horse before they're a show horse.
Like I said, because of course, he would gather cattle out in this little side field, but just when I first moved here, he would yell at me because he would call me a circle or line burner because I would only do circles or lines. And get my horses were going good. I was showing a little bit and I was doing well. He's like, just stop it. I was like, it's working. He's like, no. He's like, just do this for a month. 10 times better in a month from doing a couple circles and just doing a couple lines, just guiding everywhere, stopping here, lead changing here, spinning there. Just, it was so much progress that it just kind of opened my eyes. Okay, I don't have to be a cow horse or a reiner or a cutter. I just need to be a horseman or a horse trainer and let it flow together. And whether he even knows what he did or said meant that much to me, but it changed my outlook on horse training in general.
I really have to appreciate what you say there. If I were to pick on reiners and some of my experience with them, a lot of the ones I have ridden have been almost completely useless to me because they're so drilled in these 8 maneuvers that if I want to ride him forward and turn him from 12 o'clock to 11 o'clock, you can't because he goes to 9, he's in 90-degree increments his whole life. You can't turn him just that much. Right. He goes way over here and you got to turn him back. And it's just exactly like that. That horse is either on a circle or a line, and there is no in between, no gray area, no what I would call feel to it. Yep. I should be able to do everything by degrees, and some of those horses have no degrees. It's point A or point B, and yeah.
I took my good mare that had that point, and we've been winning a good bit. And he's like, just guide this mare and see what she does. And I've had this mare for a year, and I thought she was broke. I took her off her line or circle, completely like just lost. Just went from a $15,000 reiner to a $5,000 horse, just because I took her off her comfort zone.
We'll stay in the world of reining here a little bit. Let me ask you this question. Have you personally ever actually read the NRHA rulebook?
Yes.
Okay, well, that's good. Do you think there's a large amount of trainers that I could ask that question of that would immediately turn red in the face and lie to me?
Oh, 100%.
At least half of them have not read the rule book.
Oh, guaranteed. I know that for a fact. Again, my dumb self being a kid didn't know what the hell I was doing, so I had to find some way to figure out what to do to make a score. Or like when someone said, "Well, or you missed your marker," no idea what a marker was.
Well, let me ask you this. So again, we're on reiners. One of the pet peeves I would have about reiners, it seems to me, and this has changed in my lifetime. I watched the before and the where we are now. To me, somewhere in the early 2000s, several things changed in reining. One, inside pivot foot placement on the spin. It used to be that you had to be pretty darn accurate about that. And now to me, it seems like those horses, they can shift 10 or 15 feet over and the process of the spin. And if they were going really, really fast, they can still mark pretty well. There doesn't seem to be any penalty for that horse not holding that hind foot pivot as well as they seem to used to have. So we'll address that. But also, it seems to be that vertical flexion got put on steroids. And I would say from the reiners that I have ridden, and I'll even say I rode one behind you a few years ago at a deal, that those horses wind up vertically flexed. They're on a hinge right there. I mean, they have yield right there, super, super easy. But if you try to bend them at all, they're very, very straight and stiff sort of horses. And the lateral flexion, I think, suffers in that aspect. So what would be your thoughts on those two statements? And I would also say, since we brought up the rule book, do you feel like judging has drifted from the original intent of what it was supposed to be? In other words, do we have some fads that are in there that are now being rewarded that are not actually true to the original intent and rule book?
Yes and no. So I do, I have a bunch of things that agree with the NRHA stuff. I'll show the association as a good association, but the judging system I feel like is pretty straightforward. I mean, there's really no way to, again, if a judge, just like any judge event, if a judge likes that style, yes, they can technically mark them higher, but they got to be able to justify that mark. So there's like I said, a fad for the last couple of years is these super low-headed horses. Now, a lot of people think this comes from training, and to a certain degree, but most of it comes from the conformation and the way we're breeding these horses these days. I have a 2-year-old. I can't pick her up and soften her up yet. She hasn't given me a reason to, so I haven't worried about it. Her nose has stayed in the ground from day one. And she's still correct, still everywhere. Just she likes to have her head way down there. I think that's where people get confused is on that fad, quote unquote, is a lot of these horses are bred and built to do that. And don't get me wrong, some horses I got to put them down there and get work on that part of it, but your really good ones they stay down there from pretty early on before you even have to do anything to them. We'll go back to your second question on
They have the natural, the headset is a more natural tendency than an artificial man-made deal.
Exactly. And it also kind of goes into your second question about our reiners don't have a whole lot of lateral. Now, I do a little bit different too, but still very much straightforward. On my reiners, I really never pick them up lateral that much or that often because, again, our goal is to ride one-handed between the reins. I don't want them bent much at all because especially for a reiner, bending causes a lot of issues and spins, changes, stops. So from day one, I want them straight. And my program is a little different from now than it was back then. From day one, my first thing I teach a colt when I get on it is to stay between my bridle reins, almost like my reins between or connected to the shoulders, not the head. Because once I get the shoulders moving where everything's working from the hip up to the shoulders, everything's a whole lot easier for me to get trained without putting the bend where they want to hide a rib or move the rib cage or lose their hip, and where they want to stay naturally collected without me actually having to teach collection. Because if they're straight and driving straight, whether we're in a circle, they're going to be on a decent horse. They're going to be collected from that first ride instead of me having to dissect it and go back and teach collection.
So let me ask you this. How would you define collection?
Hip pushing up, back raising. I don't care anything about the head. Shoulders getting elevated, of course. But my main thing is I want that hip driving up underneath themselves.
And I don't mean to be argumentative here. I'm going to tell you one of the classical definitions of collection is right. the lowering of the 3 major joints of the hind end. So that's part of the horse driving under, but it also requires a certain amount of strength for the horse to kind of squat like a horseshoer, right? Not anybody can get underneath the horse and squat and stand there for 30 minutes without locking their knees. It takes development. And one of the aspects of that, people talk about lifting the back. It's actually more lifting the withers. Have you ever heard the term the cradle in the front end? So if, again, a lot of people might not realize this, you could take a 3-inch long blade pocket knife and cut a horse's front leg completely off of his body. There is nothing but muscle that holds that on. There's no bone to bone. There are some ligaments and stuff, but the front leg is not nearly as attached to the horse as you might think. And consequently, a horse can stand still and they could take their wither and lift it up 2 inches or drop it down a couple of inches. And that's really what the horses do it in collection. It isn't that they are, it's semantics, but the way that you've said it is lifting in the shoulder, and they're actually doing the opposite. They're pushing down with their shoulders and lifting with the wither. So the spinal cage is raising up, but the shoulder is connected to the ground. It can't, but the spine relative to the shoulder is rising.
Right.
And so this is what I would say. If we were to take a horse loping in collection, there would be pretty much no point at which the withers would ever be lower than the point of the hip.
Right.
But that is one of the things we see a lot with some of the reiners now with the head low position and all is that they are not actually lifting in the front end as much as we would like to be. And I'm not arguing that conformation has nothing to do with that.
Right.
It's just, it is one of those departures kind of from the classical aspect of things. And I haven't ridden enough of them. You know, if I could go climb on, I could sure feel whether, you know, the way things feel and the way things look are not always the same. But that again is one of those things. If you watch the NRHA Futurity winner from 2005 and you watch the one from last year, it would really be two pretty different pictures stylistically of the things that are going on. So there has been a significant change in my view.
Oh, 100%.
over that period of time anyway. So
100%. And it's always going to, in my opinion, it's always going to, I mean, it's like the cutting horses. It's always changing. People are finding ways. Of course, we're breeding better horses, better athletes, but everything's always evolving.
Yep.
And I think when it stops evolving is when the horse industry is going to kind of just pucker out.
what would be one of your favorite horse memories?
Oh, that's a tough one. That's a real tough one.
Doesn't have to be your favorite. I mean, just a good one, and it doesn't have anything to do with showing. It could be when you were 12 and, you know, whatever. But
I guess it was when I bought that Blue Eye Studs, because that was kind of my first reiner, quote unquote, which I don't know how that horse did what he did, because I screwed him up to all, got him back. Poor thing. Man, because I didn't know how to slide, I didn't know how to spin, and I've been working my butt off just to get this horse to stop and spin around. When I finally ran down there and just said ho, did pick the reins up and got my first, it was only like a probably 8 to 10 footer. Probably one of the happiest moments that comes right to my head in my career. Just because we worked hard on it. Again, I knew it was me getting in the way. Just I finally got so mad, I just gave him 8 foot of rein, went down there and said ho, and he just dropped his little butt, and it was 8, 10 foot, which in today's world ain't much, but I just remember I got off, took the saddle off. I think I threw it in the arena and washed him off, gave him a bath, and just made me smile ear to ear.
I feel you for sure. There isn't a whole lot that feels better than a real good stop when they really they drop and it's smooth and it's just so natural feeling. Yep, it's poetry.
Absolutely.
So how about the flip side of that? Do you have a super just massive failure that happened one day, or a real embarrassing horse story you'd be willing to tell on yourself?
Probably my most one that comes to mind. I know I got more failures than successes in my life story. So at this point in time, my first big time cow fraternity horse, I had him as a 2-year-old, trained him. First fraternity I brought him to, we did the cutting first, then the reining, and then we had to do the rein work the next day. This horse was a monster fence horse, but again, me being nervous, crapping my pants, yada yada, and all between. Boxed this cow, and this cow was way too fresh. I knew it, but I'm gonna bring this thing down the fence because this horse is a good fence horse. Well, I went down the fence and I didn't set him up, and I didn't do anything by the book. Every rule I had, I broke. Stepped in front of this cow. This guy's only like 14.2, and I'm working this thing has to be like 700-800 pound heifer. And I just crammed him into that corner, and that cow jumped up, knocked me straight out, pushed me off. Or literally just jumped over the horse, hit me, platted it. Horse took off, and it took us probably like good 15, 20 minutes to finally actually catch that horse. And that was probably I really just want to go back to my truck and just leave the horse in the arena and just go back home.
I feel you. I'll tell one on myself, and I don't know with every interview that I'll have enough embarrassing stories to tell, but there was a buckskin mare that I rode probably 15 years ago. And it was a horse that I couldn't stand for a customer that I really liked. You ever been in that uncomfortable position? And
way too often.
And like customers will mention a lot of times that this horse is rough to ride and whatever. And guys like you and I that have ridden tons of them, they have to be pretty much on the extremes to register it all. This mare would jar your teeth out of your head. I mean, your organs hurt after trotting her around. She just was just unbelievably rough and athletic and unathletic. And I'd ridden her about a year. He wants me to go to a show. So I went to a last show with her, the stock horse deal. And this was in the early part where I think you were doing a reining pattern and then the cow at the same time. After 2 or 3 years, they split that up. But
Right.
so I had done that on her, and then at that point you could also choose in roping or circling, and I decided to rope off of her. And she was, she was broke. I mean, she wasn't terrible about that, but that was right when they had gotten some of those big ass fans in the arena. And I break my rope out and I go after the cow, and man, her eyes roll back in her head and she runs right up on that cow like I thought we were fixing to get legs tangled and go head over heels. And I'm picturing, I was tied off. I'm picturing my rope hooking that fan and it just sucking me and this buckskin mare right up into the hole. It was like this is, I had 2 major wrecks on her, both at a last show, and that was kind of the first one. But like, there are horses I would die on, and this was not one of them.
This is not how you want to go down.
This is not how I want to go out.
Well, a big ass fan and a horse you don't like.
That
would be a funny sight to see, though. Just a little whoop.
Yep. I'm just sucking us right up. The look on her face, looking at me with her little stupid eyes. And she just you always have to find something redeeming about a horse. She was dumb as a box of rocks. She was unathletic as all get out. She wasn't like mean or working against you. There just was no potential there, She was a buckskin. That was what I told him. She'll make a beautiful rug for the fireplace whenever she finally dies, and then you'll get some value out of her. So,
oh man,
would you consider yourself an experimenter? Do you like to try things and play with stuff and all that? Like, I used to get a new bit, and man, that bit went on every horse I was riding for a month or two, and then you'd figure out how it would work with this personality or that training stage or whatever, and you do that kind of stuff?
Oh, whether it's from the bits to training methods, because like even today, I'm a quote unquote professional, I still go ride with other people and still call other people when I'm having an issue. And there's also some things if I'm on the road, as I do a lot, I go back and forth to Texas a lot. So I'm up at stupid o'clock in the morning. That's usually when I come up with some stupid ideas. Every now and then a good one. I'll think of some stuff I want to try, and I'll go home next day and try it. And sometimes it works out. Sometimes oh, nope, this ain't good. Let's not do that again. But very much so an experimenter as I always try to just keep going forward for my personal goals anyways.
Some of those things people don't realize have changed. This is, again, one of those things I've kind of seen in my lifetime. But you were talking about what drew you to reiners was kind of how obedient and trainable the horses are. Well, that wasn't as true in the 1960s and 70s and all as it is right now. We have changed what a horse is significantly in the last 50 or 60 years. And particularly like the cutting lines, a lot of people think of cutters and reiners together, but really today those bloodlines are pretty separate. Like the back when they weren't so much, those were some tough bronchi horses. You had to be a cowboy, and there was some blood and guts and all involved in getting those things broke. And today that's not nearly as true as it was back then. One of the other changes I think you would be too young for, but like, this was one of the things one of my mentors lived through, Mark Cooey. Nowadays, you are blessed to be in a time where there are a lot of people that'll help you. It used to be just the opposite. When the young kid was coming along, you'd ask so-and-so at a show, who you liked your horses, what do I need to do with mine? That old codger was likely to tell you how to go home and screw that thing up so that you would never win on it again. And it wasn't the spirit of cooperation. It was the spirit of take out the competition back then. So
100%. I still see that sometimes, especially like the weekend events.
Yeah.
I 110% agree with you there. 110%. Because I've been in that case where I've asked someone for help when I first started show with the cutters when I lived in Texas. I thought he was a nice guy. Went home. I'm pretty sure I screwed up every single one of my cutting horses. And I went back to the guy that taught me. He's like, who told you that? He's like, I told him whoever it was. I'm not going to mention any names. And he's like, that guy's just, he was trying to kill you.
Yeah, he's pulling your chain. Yeah.
I was like, he was nice. He's like, no, like that's the complete opposite of what you want to do. And I'm like, oh shit. Okay then.
Sometimes that fella that's nice and helpful is not actually being helpful.
No, not at all. Not in that case in the waist.
What do you wish you could go back in time and tell the 15 or 16-year-old Jay Finn? What do you wish you knew then that you know now?
Go work for someone else first. Don't be an arrogant prick and think because you watch Clinton Anderson on YouTube, you can do the same thing. That's my biggest, I won't say regret, because it has helped me. I'm able to get along with a lot of different kind of horses and also make not as talented horses still perform at a relatively high level. But I do wish that when I was younger, when I guess I didn't have the bills or overhead, that I would have went and worked for a really higher end trainer just to at least get myself set up in that right foot instead of having to screw up how many horses I've screwed up in my lifetime as a kid to get where I'm at today.
Experience is not the best teacher. It's the most expensive, and it's a whole lot cheaper if you can lease someone else's for a while. Yep.
100%. And when we get a bunch of kids that come here, and I love helping people, especially they want to be trainers. I'm the last person out there that's going to kind of throw water on someone's dream just because it is hard. Go ride with, if you want to be a trainer, go ride with Casey or Andre Papani. If you want to be a cutter, go ride with Boyd Rice or Jason, same with the cow horse. Go ride with someone because they're always hiring, first of all. And you get that experience. Yes, you might be a stall cleaner off the bat, but you get to be around those type of horses, that kind of program. You get more out of it than trying to do it how I did it, where I just did it more out of trial and error.
Yep.
So that'd be my biggest thing.
I would agree. I have a little bit of a pet peeve of, it's mostly younger people that go by some clinician's program or go to 3-month deal at their place or whatever and figure that they're a horse trainer when they get done with it. And man, yeah, like I apprenticed for 6 years and I could have done a couple more. It takes a long time to learn and feel and all of that stuff of what you're going to handle. It's not something you're going to pick up in a year or two or a few months or whatever. So
I talk to people all the time. I was like, training horses is the easiest part of the business, but learn how to take care of the horses, take care of clients, and actually, like my thing, I am terrible at invoicing. Thank God my wife she likes to invoice. But get on wrong. I do this. I do enjoy horses, but I do have to eat still.
Yeah.
How to actually run this as a business and watch overhead. And running as a business took me the longest time to learn. Where if you go to a program, they're going to teach not only how to ride those horses, but how to take care of them, deal with your vet, the farrier, upkeep, and to run it as a business.
Yeah. You're around to hear enough, half of the phone call while you're in the truck and all that stuff. You're going to pick some stuff up for sure. Yep.
Oh, exactly. Like my biggest thing I struggled with too was how to schedule as far as horse shows was. Because I was a kid, like, oh, I'm gonna go to that horse show that month. I'm going there. That don't work when you got 20-something, 30-something horse in your barn. You gotta have it pretty laid out that way. You know your deadlines. You know where you got to go, when you got to be there, and first off, when entries got to be in. I played a lot of late entries when I was younger.
Yeah, there's a business side to it. Absolutely. Well, Jay, it has been a fun and enlightening conversation. I hope I didn't offend too many Rainer sensibilities with some of my questions at all.
They'll get over it.
Yeah, it'd be all right.
Absolutely. They were kind of corny. It'll be all right.
Well, and folks, we'll have Jay's website and all that contact information linked in the show notes. So if you'd like to get in touch with him for lessons or clinic or to send a horse to him in training or whatever, we'll hook you up. So, Jay, thanks for being on.
I appreciate it, buddy. Anytime. I had a blast.
All right. Well, take care.
You too, buddy.